Imagine you get a number plate that mentions your name and your date of birth as a gift. How probable is that? And what would you make out of it? Pure coincidence or something more at play? Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of SAFT Podcast. We are getting into the meat of the fine-tuning argument where we explore how the complexity of the arrangement of the universe can be a case for a creator. And so we've covered 2 episodes so far. So Piyush, what did we look in the last episode?
Yeah, in the previous episode, it was we dug really deep. I had to open my school days physics books, notebooks, and prepare the notes. So basically, what we saw in a quantified manner, how the different constants in the universe, like for example, the constant of gravity, the constant of weak force, strong force, how they are placed in such a way, in such a fine-tuned way, that even the slightest, like even the minutest, the smaller than even we can imagine quantity of change made to these constants would make life not possible in this universe. So that's a brief of what we discussed in the previous episode.
Yeah, and you would definitely want to check that out to get a better, proper, fuller grasp on what we're going to discuss in today's episode. So, Ankit, let's start off with the first question that's on my mind. Okay.
Yeah.
We talked about, like you said, different values for constants, different values for quantities, like you said, different value for the power of gravity and all of that. Could it be the case that with gravity having different power or different form of arrangement of a quantity within the ordering of the universe, that a different form of life would have evolved as opposed to what we see now? In that case, won't life still thrive but maybe different from us? Is that possible?
Okay, before answering that question, let's first talk about what do scientists actually mean by life. So life, it is a property of organisms to consume food, to extract energy, to grow, adapt to various environments, and then to reproduce, right? So for this life to exist, the constants need to be fine-tuned incomprehensibly. In the absence of fine-tuning, even the smallest particle of life, which is, atomic matter, even chemistry, it would not have existed. So, yeah, talking about life with a change in this constant is really a long shot, and it's not possible. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how we say get a life, man, and how science define life to me. Yeah. But that is a good, a very crucial point to get a full picture on. And it actually leads to a common objection that we get to the fine-tuning argument. And so it goes in the form of a story. Imagine a puddle, right? In India, we have no lack for puddles, like potholes filled with water. So it rains and a pothole fills with water, and that puddle of water comes to sense. It becomes a sentient being. It awakens one day and it looks around and it sees that puddle is filling the pothole perfectly. Like it has taken up the actual shape of the pothole and just filled it to the brim. And the puddle says, wow, look at that. I'm fitting this pothole so perfectly well. It's like this pothole is fine-tuned for me. And so the objection that comes through that analogy, through that example, is that just because that puddle appears to be fitting perfectly well in that porthole does not mean that that porthole was fine-tuned for the puddle. It is actually a case of the puddle evolving or adapting and therefore taking the shape of the porthole. And this is used to say that is similarly the case with what we find with life in the universe. But as you pointed out, the fine-tuning argument isn't talking about just some sort of life form evolving to be complex like us and then finding the universe quite suitable or habitable. What we're talking about is the very existence of a porthole. If gravity were ever more powerful or likely powerful, likely less powerful, like you said, chemistry and physics in its basics won't exist. The the solar system, the galaxies, stars won't form, and you would have no puddle or pothole to begin with. And that is what we're talking about, not the evolution of life to adapt to the nature of the universe, but the very existence of, will there be a pothole, will there be tarmac or road or gravity there in the first place? So that's a good point for us to clarify before we move on. Now, here's another question that I want to ask you. Okay, so we said so far as we covered in the last episode in depth, that when we talk about the fine tuning of the universe, the first point that we lay down is that we take the laws of nature, and we use the example of Newton's law of gravity, we brought up the formulation of the law of gravity. Our starting point is that we take the laws of nature to be the same. The formulation, none of that changes. But then we ask, what would it look like if we were to change the value of the gravitational constant? Or what would it be if the entropy level of the universe at the beginning were different? And then we probe the nature of the fine-tuning of the universe. But if someone were to say that, hey, maybe in a universe with different laws of nature, different formulations, different expressions of the laws of nature, the changes in the constants and the quantities may permit or entertain the existence of life, right? So our point is, we take the laws of nature to be constant, we tweak the constants and quantities and see what happens. But if someone comes up and says, hey, what if, instead of keeping the laws of nature as fixed as they are right now, what if we permit change in them? In that case, won't life exist with different gravitational force constant and different quantity and as such? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the fine-tuning argument, you get that a lot. A lot of people come and say that, what if there are different universes with different laws of nature, right? Like, for example, someone might come and say that, what if there is this universe where the value of the gravitational constant is double, but that is suitable for life to exist in that universe. But it's really important that we stop them right there, because when we talk about the fine-tuning argument, what we are doing is we are first we are first creating a foundation, right? The foundation is these laws of nature. So that is something which we are foundationally setting, and then we are going ahead and talking about the argument. So in layman's term, going in that direction is really irrelevant when we talk about the fine-tuning argument, because we're talking about the universe with the laws of nature as constant and foundational to what we have been discussing in the previous episodes. Yeah.
And I think a way to visualize how that sort of looks like is philosopher John Leslie. I don't know if you've come across him. He gives an illustration, and I'm going to just make some minor tweaks to it so that we can better understand in our setting. So we've, in our classrooms, in our school days and our college days, you would have had maybe a smart board, a whiteboard, or a blackboard, or something of that sort. So imagine our classroom that has a wall, obviously, and a whiteboard on the wall. And there is a single fly, a single housefly placed right in the middle of that board. And if you were to fire a bullet at random, how probable is it that the bullet would hit that solitary fly on that blank whiteboard? Quite improbable. Yeah. Now, even if the rest of the space on the wall outside the whiteboard were to be filled with flies, such that any random bullet aimed at any part of that part of the wall would hit it, it is still irrelevant when we talk about the probability of a random bullet hitting that single fly on that whiteboard, right? So that is what we are talking about. It could be the case that with different formulation of the laws of nature, life would somehow exist and all of that. That could be but that's not what the argument is focusing on. This is the proper formulation of the argument, that the laws of nature are constant, and we are purely accounting for the changes in the constants and quantities, the gravitational constants and as such, and the arbitrary quantities of the universe. Now, you may wonder, okay, why are we doing that? Why are we not taking the laws of nature to be variant? Well, the reason is because we have a single sample to work with. This universe that we observe and we are part of. A single sample. Now, how can we explore different hypothetical universes or how things would have been if things were different? Well, we are taking that into account with this approach that we mentioned. The laws are fixed, the same as they are, but we move around the mathematical values of the gravitational constant and other constant figures and the other quantities. And this is what is used by scientists as well, non-Christian scientists, when they talk about the complexity or the improbability of the universe existing as such. Now, a skeptic may say, like you pointed out, right? With a different universe, different laws of nature, things would have been different. And that's fine. They're free to come up, show us with different formulation of the laws of nature, how it would have looked like. It's up to them to do that if they want to do that. But as far as we are concerned, just going with standard approach taken in the scientific world as well, where we ask, what would it have been if gravity were ever more powerful or less powerful? So this is something similar to what we do. I come from an economics background. What we do in economics as well. When we come up with a theory or when we draw up a model, we say ceteris paribus, meaning everything else remaining the same. So we would say something like it's an open market or it's a closed market, a closed economy or open economy. And we have these assumptions built into place to help us to make sense of what's happening, to sort of compare between theories and all of that. And if you make all of that completely open for evaluation and completely open for change, then whoever wants to do that has to deal with all of the variables at play. But in certain cases, it makes perfect sense to keep some assumptions fixed as they are. And that appears to be the case here as well. So that is the reason that we formulate the argument in this way.
I mean, I honestly feel like it's really a dead end and there's no point of doing that. It's just, spending time for finding something which is not that relevant. Moving ahead, like talking more about the fine-tuning argument, I'll just like to put in one statement for our audience is that, the fine-tuning argument is not a case of reasoning by analogy. I mean, I know that we spoke about analogies at the beginning. We spoke about what William Paley had to say when he said that, when he compared a watch to the universe, or that is one analogy. So I'm just trying to make you understand that the fine-tuning argument is not a case of such an analogy, but it is the inference to the best explanation.
Exactly. Because what we're asking ourselves, like you said, as in the last few words, is that given what we understand, what is the best explanation of the data before us? So we are inferring to the best explanation. And this is not something that we don't use in our daily life, or this is not such an archaic or complex thing to be used only when Christians want to make the case for God or anything. No, this is something we use all throughout life. Like, for example, if a detective wants to solve crime, right? They look at the data. Is there a murder weapon? What's the cause of death? If the person was found dead in their room, was there signs of forced entry? Were there bruises to the body? And putting all of that together, they would say, this appears to be a case of, natural death, suicide, or homicide. I remember this brilliant example from the BBC show Sherlock Holmes. Benedict Cumberbatch actor, and it's really good. Like, for a Sherlock Holmes fan, it was an amazing show. And there's this one scene where they go to the crime scene of a banker who died, and the police says, "Okay, it's a suicide. There's a gunshot wound to the side of his head. There's a gun next to him. The gun has his fingerprints. Yeah, this is a clear open shut case of a suicide." And then Sherlock Holmes says, "No, it's a homicide." And the police officers are like, they don't like this guy because this is a private detective who's coming in and interfering with the police work. And Sherlock Holmes then points out that the way the handle of the cup is placed, the pen and the notebook are placed on the left side of the telephone. The handle of the cup, teacup, is pointing towards the left side of the body. All of that points to the fact that he was left-handed. But the gunshot wound was to the right side of his head. So he was like, wait, he wants to do suicide. So he twists his arm all the way around. Like, how does he go about doing it? So even though he wasn't there to witness the crime, and even though he probably would have never ever met a person ever in his life, by seeing all of those pieces of data around him, he's able to infer to the best explanation that he's left-handed, and therefore the best explanation of what they've seen there is that it is not a suicide but rather a homicide. Now, keeping Sherlock Holmes aside, we also do this in our home. Like if you walk into your apartment and you get the sense of smell of gas, you would ask yourself, is the gas leaking in my home? And you would, go back in time trying to retrace the events. And you'd be like, okay, well, the gas ran out yesterday and I forgot to call the gas guy. So then you know that, okay, right now your gas cylinder is not leaking, even though you have not gone in and seen with your own eyes, like you haven't interacted with it with your 5 senses. You can still infer that it is not yours. Why? Because you know that the gas ran out yesterday and you didn't refill it. But imagine you remember that it's a full cylinder that was placed just an hour ago. So now there's a possibility, right? Maybe the guy didn't fix it properly. That's quite sensible, probable. And so maybe that now appears to be the better explanation, that your gas is leaking than to say some other apartment is leaking. So we use this all around to make sense of life, to navigate life, to unravel the deep mysteries of the universe always.
Yeah. So this explanation which you're talking about, even John Leslie, he spoke about tidy explanation. Is this what you're hinting at?
Yes. So, I think this is a point where we can take a couple of minutes to break it down. And it's really fascinating about what John Leslie is getting at, right? So a tidy explanation is an explanation that not only explains, I feel like we're using the word explanation, explain far too often now. A tidy explanation is an explanation that not only explains a certain situation, but it reveals in doing so that there is something to be explained. Okay. Now let's try and break it down. In the US, and I think mostly in the western part of the world, you can get unique number plates with letters and numbers of how we want it to be. But that's not the case with maybe where we are. Like, for example, in Kerala, where I am from, our number plate would have KL representing Kerala, MH for Maharashtra, all of that. And then, and I think this is the case for all across India. So you have the state, then you have the district. So Kottayam is KL05, and then the number, obviously. Now, in UAE, where I am at right now, you would have number plate issued, again, similar based upon different emirates. So if it's Abu Dhabi, that would be reflected. If it's Ajman, it would have the Ajman in it. If it's Dubai, it would be DXP, then followed by a letter A, double A, B, double B, C, double C, D, E, F. And then, 5-digit, 4-digit, 3-digit, you can auction and get number plates. So that's the format, right? You have very little space to work around. It's the place, a letter, and then the number, and that's where you get some flexibility. In Delhi, I know that there's this number plate part about odd number cars to be driven only on certain days, even number. Like what's that about? Is that supposed to do with the pollution situation in Delhi?
Yeah. I mean, the pollution over here is really bad. I mean, especially towards the end of the year, we are like, Delhi is a city which is surrounded by states, different states. And towards the western side, you have Punjab. So towards the end of the year, you see, people burning crops in Punjab, and the entire smoke comes into Delhi. And that's the time when you are entering into winters. So the smoke and the fog, they mix together, and we have a lot of smog over here. And even, the festival of Diwali, where people fire crackers and all. So due to all these reasons, there's a lot of pollution. And not only that, throughout the year, due to the excessive number of cars in Delhi, there's a lot of pollution. So because of this reason, the government came up with something called as odd and even. So what they do is, during the week, there are certain days when only odd number plates can go out on the road. If an even number plate car comes out, then they charge hefty fines. And similarly, on the other dates, they have the even car plate number car going out. So that's the system over here. And
Yeah. When I was in Punjab, I got to see early morning when I was flying out. I got to see the stubble burning. Really difficult to take in the fact that much smoke was coming out. Farmers, for them, they have no other option, but the pollution that it leads to is crazy. Anyway, we went off a tangent a bit more. But that's the case, right? For us, number plates is sort of like fixed. We can't have any way around it. But in the US and in other parts of the world, you have the flexibility. Now imagine a guy named Bob gets a number plate that has the letters CHT and 4271 or something like that. So, and he gets this for his birthday car. Okay, and like I said, in the US, you can pick out what the number plate must mean. Because my cousin in Canada, he has taken a number plate that has. So he's from Qatar and he's from a particular district in Kerala. So he has mentioned both of that in the number plate, and then his year or something of that sort. So he got to pick that out. So Bob gets a number plate for his birthday that says CHT 4271, something of that sort. Now that is a complex ordering of numbers and letters, right? You have 26 different letters, and you have 10 different numerals that could be placed in any order in any of those three spaces. And we have these ways to compute the probability of getting that, or the different ways you can order those numbers and letters in that set of spaces there, to do in mathematics and probability theory and all of that. So in a sense, it is highly improbable or quite improbable that he would get that one specific set of number plate. But Bob can say that, hey, I was supposed to get some number plate. I can't drive around without a number plate. I was supposed to get some number plate, and it just so happened that it was this number plate. Fine. But if Bob were to notice that the number plate on the car that he got for his birthday, picked out by his family members, says BOB 8849. And Bob remembers that, hey, his name is Bob, B-O-B, and his birthday is August 8, 1949. So Bob 8849 is now a reflection of his name and August 8, 1949. He could still say that, I was supposed to get some number plate. They had to put some letters and some numbers in there. It just so happened that, I just happened to receive this. But can he really shrug off that unique number plate in that manner now? Not really. So this leads to what William Dembski in his book, The Design Inference, says what a tidy explanation looks like. It is that there are two conditions that must be satisfied for an explanation to be tidy explanation. The first thing is that whatever you are explaining is something improbable, and that you're dealing with an independent pattern. So two conditions. One, you're explaining an improbable event, scenario, something of that sort. You are explaining a high improbability, and you are dealing with an independent pattern there. When this happens, you get specified complexity. So not just complexity, right? CHT 4271 is just complexity. You can have the numbers in any order. There is some sort of complexity to the way it is placed, right? If the government says you need to have 3 letters and 4 numbers, getting that in that order is a form of complexity. But that's it. Like, there's nothing more to it. But Bob 8849 is not just any form of complexity. There is a specificity to it. There is something unique to it. Why? Because not only is it improbable, he could get any number plate, so he got one. There is the improbability part there. But there is an independent pattern that Bob is trying to make sense of. Now, if Bob were to get a number plate that says B84, B08 or 09, BB84 or something of that sort, it could still be in some sense a case of complexity, because it's a complex ordering of numbers and letters, and one can make the case in some sense. But still, there is no pattern there. Like, it is still improbable, but there is no pattern there to demand an explanation. In the number plate case, it's improbability and then the presence of pattern that says that there must be a tidy explanation to this. And so what that leads to is that when we talk about the universe, we're not just simply talking about a high sense of improbability. It's highly improbable that gravity had this strength, or that the expansion rate of the universe was so and so that life would. It's not just simple high probability looking at how the way the universe is right now, But it is also the fact that when we look at and see what all of those improbabilities, all of those constants and quantities lead to, we see that they lead repeatedly and across different values and proportions throughout the universe. They all lead to the existence of life and eventually the existence of highly complex sentient life with immaterial mind. So we get high improbability and a pattern at play. It's all
Yeah.
making way for life to exist. So therefore, we have to explore a tidy explanation without just shrugging it off as a pure chance.
Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, with that we come to the end of this episode. We have crossed our time limit, which we set for ourselves. But I mean, it was very important that we talk about it in a deeper way and understand more about it. So before closing, let me just tell you how the fine-tuning argument is formulated. Premise 1, it states that the fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Premise 2 says that it is not due to physical necessity or chance. Therefore, in conclusion, it is due to design. So that's the fine-tuning argument, and as you know that when we focused about when we talked about the previous arguments, the Kalam cosmological argument, the moral argument, how we kept on repeating this in our episodes, and then towards the end we all had by-hearted it. We're going to do that this time as well. With that, we'll like to say adieu, and we want to see you in the next one. Stay tuned as we dig deeper into this argument. Yeah.